Hello, it's Catherine, the director at Cambridge Law Studio, welcoming you to the Catherine and Rachel Legal English podcast. We are an English language school in Cambridge. We were established a very long time ago, and we help international lawyers and law students and judges and translators sometimes get better legal English. Today's podcast explains to you, if you come from a codified law system, a little bit more about how the criminal system works in common law countries. Especially in the UK, we involve the public a lot more in every step of the criminal legal process. For example, what would you do with a drunk driver who was driving without a license and creating a lot of trouble for everyone around them? This is the kind of question we ask, all the way up to more serious crimes. So you're going to get a lot of vocabulary, a little bit of pronunciation help, and a lot of listening skills gained. So let's go and have a look at the English criminal legal system and the role the public play in it. Here we are. Hello, Rachel.
Hello.
I'm surprised to see you in one piece. I thought you might have melted today.
It is so warm here, and it's meant to be about 30 degrees tomorrow, which I'm already just dreading.
Greta Thunberg was right, wasn't she?
Absolutely.
It's not meant to be 30 degrees in the north of England in June, but here we are. You're in one piece, and I'm pleased to see you. Today's topic might interest you, Rachel, because I'm going to ask for your opinion a lot. And what I'd like to talk about is things about the English way of doing things that surprises lawyers from other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
So this is things like, number one, the role of the community in law.
Mm-hmm.
So how much input ordinary members of the public have in our legal system. That's always a surprise.
Yeah.
Number two, our legal education.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like that either. It's very different from European systems and other systems. And number three, if we get time, in litigation, how our system pushes the two parties who are coming to court not to come to court.
Oh, okay.
The judges do not really like it when the case comes before them. I know, it's literally their job.
Yes.
But it's built into our system. So these are all things that I've seen over the years, not just surprise, but really shock lawyers from other systems.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see how you react. We're going to start with the role that lay persons have in our legal system. Now, lay persons. The grammar of lawyers is awful because the plural of person is people.
Yes.
And I don't know why lawyers say persons, but they do.
Yeah.
So a lay person is someone who is involved in law, but isn't a lawyer.
Okay.
So we're going to begin with the lowest criminal court in the English system.
Okay.
That's the magistrate's
Yeah.
court. Now, most legal jurisdictions around the world have that word magistrate, but it can be what we call a false friend.
Mm-hmm.
It probably means something different here.
Yeah.
What it means in other countries.
Yeah.
So how do you feel, Rachel, about sitting in a court and deciding whether someone is innocent or guilty, but also deciding on their punishment? How do you feel about that?
Well, Probably not.
Me too. But that's exactly what magistrates do
Mhm.
in the lowest criminal court. They are judge and jury,
Mhm.
but none of them are lawyers or judges usually.
Oh,
They are people from the community.
okay.
So I'll be the bad one because I want you be the bad one. How would you describe the crime of shoplifting? What is a shoplifter?
It's theft, but done in a supermarket setting.
Yeah, if I was going to shoplift, which I'm not, I think I would shoplift chocolate.
Oh, absolutely. We have a Lindt. Forgive my pronunciation of that. Anyone from Sweden, I deeply
Switzerland, not
Switzerland.
Sweden.
I deeply apologize. I am terrible. But we have a shop near us that hosts all of these beautiful chocolates, and I think I'd probably go there.
And shoplift.
Yeah.
If you were going to
If I was going to, which I'm not going to.
No, neither am I.
No.
But shoplifting is the crime of going into a shop like a supermarket, an Apple store, a sports shop,
Yeah.
and taking things with no intention of paying for them.
Yeah.
It's very difficult because everything's got a security tag,
Yeah.
but people do it. Now, let's imagine I've shoplifted.
Okay.
A lot of chocolate and maybe some dates.
Oh, interesting.
And they're very, very expensive. So now that is not a serious crime.
No.
It's a minor crime. The value of the goods that I stole is £35.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go to the court where I get a judge and a jury.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to my local magistrates court. And there I will find a panel of 3. The middle one is usually the chairperson.
Okay.
They control the magistrates.
Yeah.
And there are 3 so that you always get a majority decision.
Yeah.
If you just had 2, you might get what we call deadlock.
Yeah, they would disagree.
Yeah, you can't find a decision because you're deadlocked.
Yeah.
It's 50-50. So there are always 3. Now, here's the surprise. The middle magistrate of the 3, the chairperson, is a retired teacher.
Okay.
The woman to her left is a cleaning lady.
Okay.
And the man to her right is a British telecom engineer.
Okay.
So he deals with people's telephones and internet. And I am going to come before them for my shoplifting, and they will decide whether I'm guilty. And if I am guilty, what my punishment will be. Now, there is a lawyer in court who's usually a barrister, but that barrister is there to guide and give advice, not to make decisions. So I am being judged by my own community and not by a professional judge. What do you think?
I quite like it. I think there's pros and cons to it. Absolutely.
True, there are good things and bad things, but I think that's true of
everything. Yeah. I suppose if they're people from your community and your walk of life, I suppose, they're less biased. They could maybe understand how you got to that point, or, be more sympathetic, I suppose.
Or less sympathetic.
Depending on... Yeah.
Yeah. They know the community.
Yeah.
They know the problem families.
Yeah.
They know the from areas. They know the reputations of the schools.
Yeah.
So the idea of the magistrates' court is if a crime is not too serious, it should be judged by the community. And
yeah,
when I say that, lawyers from other jurisdictions, they go crazy, honestly. And they say, how can they decide because they don't have legal education? But my case is quite simple. I went into my local shop, I took some chocolate and some dates. The magistrates can see, I'm pointing up here to see me. I clearly have committed this crime because I'm on film doing it. So deciding that I'm guilty doesn't take a legal genius.
No, it's self-explanatory.
It's self-explanatory. And now they can decide my punishment. But of course, there are limits. They can't send me to prison for 20 years.
No.
There are limits. And I think that's the first big shock for lawyers from other jurisdictions, because a judge and a jury are a very famous thing.
Yeah.
But the majority of criminals never get a judge and a jury because the majority of crime is minor crime.
Yeah.
It stays in the magistrates' court.
Yeah.
Now, if the magistrates think a crime is too serious for them, they immediately refer it to the next court up in the hierarchy, which is the Crown Court.
Yeah.
And there you get a judge and a jury. Magistrates are not paid.
Oh, that's interesting.
They're volunteers. They're volunteers. And they do 13 days a year as a magistrate. That's all they do.
That's so
13.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you apply to be a magistrate in your region. You cannot be a magistrate if you yourself have committed a serious crime.
I think that's fair.
Or if you have been bankrupt.
Oh, that's interesting.
That seems a bit harsh.
Yeah.
But bankruptcy is such a serious thing in this country.
It really is.
So you can't be a magistrate if you've been bankrupt, and they're not paid. They're volunteers. So all of this comes as a big surprise to countries who treat small crime, minor crime, in a different way. Now, Rachel, there aren't three of us. There are only two. But I'm going to give you three crimes, and you and I are going to be magistrates, and we're going to hope we don't get deadlocked because we haven't got a third one to help us. So the first minor criminal is a young man, aged 19, and he was pulled over in his car by the police. Now, when you're pulled over, you've seen it 100 times on TV, the light goes on the police car and you're asked to stop. And then the police officer says, I need to see your driving license and your insurance. Those are the two things they ask for. This young man has no driving license and no insurance. Here are our options. So we find him guilty, because guilty. It's easy to prove that someone doesn't have a driving license. Excuse me. So we can give him a fine. Now, a fine is a financial punishment. You pay money to be punished, but our limit is £5,000.
Okay.
We can give him community service. Now, that is unpaid work in the community. You have to go and paint walls of community centres or pick up litter, dig a garden in the park. And you have to wear a rather embarrassing orange high visibility jacket. So everyone, you're doing community service. And we can even send him to prison for up to 12 months, but not longer than 12 months.
Interesting.
So we can give him a fine,
Mhm.
which means make him pay money. We can get him to do unpaid work for the community,
Mhm.
or we can send him to prison for up to 12 months. So he's 19, pulled over by the police, no driving license, no insurance. Now, this doesn't require a judge and a jury.
No.
It just requires 3 sensible people to agree on what to do. So what would you like to do with him?
Nobody was hurt, so I don't see the point in putting him away for a little while.
Putting him away? What does that mean?
Like incarcerating him.
What does that mean? You
Um,
mean putting him in prison?
yes, I do. I do.
I like that you said putting him away, because that's the way most people
Yeah.
describe going to prison.
I
He was put
knew
away for 10 years. Yeah.
I knew my error immediately after that, and then immediately again.
You knew I was going to jump on
Yeah.
that. So I am not as kind as you,
Mm,
because yes, no one was hurt, but he was prepared to take the risk
I agree, yes.
that they would be, and that could be my grandchildren in the car that he
Very
hit.
true.
So I'm a bit more, but I'm not a stronger, not a worse. I'm a more unpleasant magistrate. What are you going to do? Community service?
I think a hefty fine will stop him in his tracks.
Hefty fine. What does hefty mean?
A big one.
A big one. Yeah, I like that's a collocation. A hefty fine.
Yes.
It means a fine that might bring tears
Yes.
to his eyes.
Yeah.
We can fine him up to £5,000. Now, his job is he's an apprentice builder. He's an apprentice builder. So he's learning how to be a builder. And, his salary is not fantastic. So what are you going to fine him, Rachel?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't think community service is the right option.
Okay.
I think because he's an apprentice and on an apprentice wage, it'll take him longer, and therefore, hopefully, make him understand his crime a little bit better. If
I need a number.
I don't know.
You're a magistrate. I wouldn't fine him, so you have to decide on the fine. It's your solution to this.
How long would you have him in prison for?
I'm unrealistic. I would put him in prison for 6 months.
Terrible. So mean.
I don't think I am mean. I think I'm protecting the public from this idiot.
But he didn't have insurance and he didn't have a driver's license. Both terrible, terrible things.
Yeah. So can you see, though, that we don't need a law degree to discuss this?
Yeah. We just need common sense.
We just need common sense, yeah. Okay, I'm ending this one for 6 months. We need a third one. Now, the second one, this is quite a nice one. A couple come out of a pub on a Saturday night. They're both aged 25, a man and a woman, and they've both had too much to drink.
Okay.
So they start physically pushing each other and shouting.
I thought you said this was a nice one, Catherine.
It is. The end. And a police officer comes along and thinks, oh, God, Saturday night, more of this.
Yeah.
And what the police officer sees is a man pushing a woman. So he tries to restrain the man and said, "Come on now, you've had too much to drink. Stop this, you're going to hurt her." And what happens is what often happens. His girlfriend, instead of saying, "Thank you, police officer,"
Yeah.
attacks the police officer and
Okay.
says, "Leave him alone. How dare you?" That I've seen that happen
Yeah, I have also seen that
a lot
happen.
of times. But she attacks this police officer a bit too much, and the police officer bumps his head and ends up with a cut on his face and a black eye. So she is taken to the police station and she is charged with the crime of assaulting a police officer. Magistrates court, because the police officer has a cut and a black eye. There's no brain injury,
It'll
no
heal.
broken bones. It will heal. So here we are, Rachel. She says she's sorry, she was drunk, and she'll never do it again. What are we going to do?
Prison.
No, I would say to her, go home and never do it again.
Really?
Yeah, I would. See, this is why you need 3.
And maybe it's the difference in generation.
I think it's the difference in personality. I don't think it's generational.
Yeah. And no, I don't. I would argue that that's more dangerous because she could turn on anybody if she's so willing to turn on a police officer.
Let's agree to disagree on her. I'm not putting her in prison, you are. This is why we need 3.
Yeah.
This is why we need magistrates with degrees, magistrates who are a postman, magistrates who are cleaning ladies, some old, some young, some black, some Asian, some white. It's supposed to be a reflection of the community.
Yeah, I can understand, I think, having, role played it, that it makes the most sense that they're judged by their community.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can understand how that works.
Well, I've got a third and final case
okay.
today.
So that we can disagree further. Okay.
I don't think we're going to disagree on this one. But this is why the third magistrate should be a man. So we've got 3 female students who are all studying at university, and they're sharing a house near the university, typical student house. They have a landlord and they pay rent to the landlord. After they have lived in the house for 6 months, they find a hidden camera in one of the bedrooms.
Okay.
What we're going to do?
And it's been, how long have they lived there?
6 months. Why? I don't know why that makes a difference, but okay, 6 months.
And their landlord has been recording for 6 solid months.
Yes.
Prison.
You're such a harsh magistrate, Rachel.
Prison.
Well,
that's awful. That's so invasive.
It's so invasive. We can only send him to prison for 12 months. So one option that's open to us is to refer this up to the Crown Court.
Yeah, refer it up and get a longer sentence. Please and thank you.
I agree. So because we're both women, I feel that we probably need...
We have some bias, I think.
We have a lot of bias. Yeah. But yeah, let's send him to prison for 25 years, in my opinion. But all we can do as magistrates... Now, here's where we say to the barrister who's sitting in court waiting for questions, can we refer this to the higher court, please? Yeah, and we just cross our fingers that the barrister says yes. I
don't think the other options are viable options.
I'm quite surprised by how strict a magistrate you turned out to be, Rachel. But Everybody's in prison, basically.
You thought I was going to be all la-di-da because I wanted to find the first person. But if it was up to you, all of them would be in prison, bar the drunkard.
Exactly. That's why you need 3.
Yeah.
And a little bit of training.
Yes.
Magistrates do get training. But basically, it's a reflection of what the community thinks should happen.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to most criminals in England,
Mm.
because these are not major crimes that require a judge and jury.
Yeah.
Jury. How do you end up on a jury?
You
Well,
just get selected, don't you? It's a random selection, isn't
It's
it?
a random selection. You just suddenly get a letter in the post,
Mhm.
unless you're a criminal,
Yeah.
a bankrupt, a judge, or a member of the royal family,
Yeah, nice.
or a lunatic. If you're just a normal person, you can get called up for jury duty. The letter that you get is called a jury summons.
Mhm.
And the average case is 10 days. You're not paid, but your employer is compensated. So you're going to get your usual salary,
Yeah.
but you're not paid to go on the
Yeah.
jury. And it's considered a kind of civic duty,
Yeah.
your duty as a citizen, and a bit of an honour, actually,
Yeah.
to go and sit on a jury.
Mhm.
And again, international lawyers will say, how can they decide something so important when they don't have legal education?
But haven't they got to have? Haven't they got to have? That's terrible grammar. Oh my goodness. Haven't they got to all agree? It's got to be unanimous, hasn't it?
It usually does, yes. But the thing is, jurors don't need to know law. They're not there to establish law. They're there to establish who to believe.
Yeah.
Because in almost every criminal case, people give evidence and one of them must be lying.
Yeah.
I've seen it so often because I've sat in the public gallery in the Central London Criminal Court maybe 50 times in my life with different groups of students. And you hear people give evidence, and occasionally you think, I wouldn't like to be on the jury because I believed him, but now I believe him.
Yeah.
You know, they're kind of equally believable. And the jury go away after the case and they just kind of decide who was telling the truth there.
Yeah.
What are the facts? So yes, and the principle is the same as magistrates. We believe that the community should have a role in criminal law, not contracts or mergers and acquisitions or anything like that. Just, do you believe this person? What are the facts? One interesting one I saw was a young man in London who robbed a post office. He sort of went in, pretended he had a gun, and said, "Give me all the cash." And they did, but he was the most inexpert robber ever. He had the cash in plastic supermarket bags and he had no car. He just set off running through gardens in North London with police chasing him.
Wonderful.
And I can't remember the numbers, but let's imagine £10,000 was stolen from that post office. Yeah. When the police returned the money, half of it was missing.
Okay.
5,000. Now, they jumped on him in someone's garden and put handcuffs on him in the garden, and they'd taken the money. And he was saying, the police took half of it. I took 10, but I didn't have time to hide 5.
Yeah.
The police have taken it. And the jury have to decide, is that true?
Yeah.
So they have to listen to the facts. And you you don't need a law degree to listen to the facts.
No,
and
it's
decide
yeah.
whether that policeman was dishonest or not.
It's just critical thinking skills.
Critical thinking. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. And I think there's a natural bias because some people 100% support the police and think they can do nothing
No wrong.
and some people think they can do no right.
Yeah.
So, it's tricky. But I haven't ever sat on a jury. My brother has. I don't think I'd like it.
I don't think I'd like it either. I'm naturally not very good at making concrete decisions when I know that there's a repercussion for somebody.
Yeah.
And I think I would struggle with that.
Imagine being on the jury in one of the American states where they still have the death penalty.
It would be something that I would have a problem with my morality, I suppose.
Yeah.
No.
No, I wouldn't like it.
No.
But we have this strong belief from the magistrates' court to the jury that the community has to be involved, and that does shock international lawyers quite a lot.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to legal education?
Yes.
Which is an even bigger shock.
Yes.
Okay, here's the thing lawyers don't like. You do not need a law degree to be a lawyer in England.
Yeah, you just need critical thinking skills.
You need a degree.
Yeah, you need a degree in something else, though.
It can be in any subject.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be law. And when I tell this to groups of lawyers from other countries, I kind of have to cover my ears because of the explosion of noise that comes. Let me tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
For years and years, of course, you did need a law degree. And then law firms in London began to complain that they were not getting the best graduates for the job.
Yeah.
What they were saying was a lot of people who would be excellent lawyers do a degree in history or geography or philosophy, and we want them.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that's possible is England, as in a lot of countries, the law degree is very academic
Yeah.
and not very practical.
Yeah.
So if you ask a lawyer from almost any country, what percentage of your law degree do you actually use at work? They say 5, maybe 10.
Yeah.
And that's international. So it means 90%, 80% of your law degree is academic background.
Yeah.
So the big law firms in London said, please change legal education so that someone who does a history degree has a way to convert to law quickly and easily to work as a lawyer. Now, this was granted.
Mm-hmm.
The authorities said, yeah, okay, we'll do that if that's what you want. And it's because in the English economy, when you look at what we sell to the world, we sell banking, insurance, education, and law. So law is what we call an engine of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we try to give law firms what they need to do the job.
Yeah.
So what I did was a degree in English language and literature. And then I did a 1-year conversion course to law.
Mm-hmm.
And that horrifies lawyers from jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And some of them say, it's because you don't have a civil code. It's because you have the common law.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the reason at all. the reason is the law firms are looking for practical skills. So they interview graduates and say, you have got the right skills, or you have got the right skills. You have got a law degree, but you're too academic.
Yeah, my sister is currently studying for her law degree. And her the entirety of her syllabus is very academic. It doesn't ask you how to practically
do things
in that field.
Well, an example is you study contract law for however many years, but no one ever sits you down at university with a contract and explains it line by line.
Yeah.
Or tells you how to really negotiate that contract in real life. So law firms say, okay, you have a philosophy degree. How would you solve this problem? How would you do this? Even though you haven't studied law, they're looking for people who can think along the lines of practical solutions rather than academic knowledge. So, for example, I go for an interview with a law firm and I've got a law degree. And I'm asked to interview one of our clients is a major investment bank. One of their directors is a woman who has had 3 babies in the last 4 years. She's constantly on maternity leave. We feel her concentration has gone and we want her out.
Yeah.
What do we do? Now, someone with a law degree might say, well, under the Employment Act 1981, Section 4, you cannot fire her because, which is great, you've studied law and you know what the law is. A philosophy graduate might say, well, there's going to be no crime here. No one's going to go to prison. It's employment law. So I would give her a huge amount of money to go away and then make her sign a confidentiality agreement.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds terrible, but that's a solution for the client. Knowing the law isn't always the useful part of it.
It's being able to apply it to situations and get the best possible outcome for whoever you're representing.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you should never really tell a client you can't do that. You tell the client it will cost you this much if you do that.
I have a question. Why I can totally understand the difference between academic and practical and why they would look for those types of skills, but why didn't they just make the existing law degrees more practical?
Rachel, I agree with you 100%. And I'm always saying, imagine if doctors had the same type of education, lawyers. Imagine if pilots flying planes had the same, it's time for a huge revolution in law, but it hasn't come.
Yeah.
So you choose whether you want to be a solicitor or a barrister. Barristers are litigators. They stand up in court in their wigs and they're advocates. That's what they do. On the whole, the richest lawyers in London are solicitors.
Okay.
Because they draft contracts, they negotiate, they work in mergers and acquisitions, they do financial regulation law. So although everyone has this vision of the barrister as being the most successful, well-paid, there are some superstar barristers.
Yeah.
But on the whole, if you want to get rich in London, you're better being a solicitor. Yeah. I have a book to recommend. If some people enjoy learning by reading, I'm holding up the book. This is my favourite barrister ever. His name's John Mortimer. This is his autobiography, the story of his life, and it's called Murderers and Other Friends. So he was a criminal barrister in London and a writer, and it's a good read over the summer for anyone who wants to learn legal English by reading.
Yes.
So yes, that's the basis of our legal education. You know, a hairdresser can't decide to be a solicitor. You do need a degree,
Yeah.
and then you need a training contract with a law firm. That takes 2 years, and it's extremely difficult to get.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So a lot of people do a law degree or a 1-year conversion to law, and then they don't get a training contract.
Fair
That's
enough.
the difficult part.
Yeah.
Very quickly, I'd like to talk about our third point of the culture clash that we have with some other countries, and that is the pressure to settle when you're involved in litigation.
Yeah.
Now, litigation is the process of going to court to solve a dispute. And in our system, in England, everything about the process pushes you to come to an agreement.
Yeah.
I was furious when I was involved in litigation. I got into litigation with a builder because I bought a holiday house that I'm always mentioning down in Yorkshire, in the north of England, and the house was in a terrible state. So I came to an agreement with the local builder that he would fix up the house and, you know, make it beautiful again. When we got to the end, he said to me, "Oh, I went a little bit over budget. There were a few extras." And I thought, "Oh, hello, what's this?" He said some of the materials cost more than we thought, and we discovered a few jobs that need. And I thought, "Oh no, what's coming?" Now, the bill for the extras that I hadn't agreed was over £10,000. So I said no. I said, if I had been my husband, my brother, or my son, I don't think he would have done that.
Yeah.
So no. So we ended up in litigation, and he would not back down. So I would say, "I'll give you 7, I'll give you 5, you know, just make it stop." Nope, he wanted 10, he wanted 10. So we went to court, and the judge came out, we all stood up, we all sat down, and the judge said, "This should not have got this far. There's a room over there with a coffee machine and a table. I want you to go in there for an hour, and when you come out, I want you to have agreed a settlement." So even on the day you're in court, now I said, "What I've got to I've tried to settle. This isn't fair." But that's what happens. Everything in our system is, why are you here?
Yeah.
Why does it reach this point?
Yeah.
Now, people in other jurisdictions might agree with that, or they might think it's awful. But it does mean that very, very few cases really come before a civil judge.
Yeah.
It's best to settle as quickly and as cheaply as you can, if possible. I'd be very interested to know what our listeners think about that, because it is controversial.
Yes. I can see why.
So those are the big surprises for international lawyers about the British system. And all I can say to finish, Rachel, is if I ever do commit a minor crime, I really hope you're not a magistrate.
I hope for your sake I'm not either.
Bye.